Good morning, good morning. Welcome to, I think, a really relevant topic that we're going to be discussing this morning, looking at engagement with schools and with school leavers. I've been training accountants for about 28 years now, and in that period, one of the biggest shifts I've seen is away from, I think, a predominance of graduate recruitment schemes, which was certainly the case when I was training as a chartered accountant 30 years ago. There's been a real shift in the last few years, particularly towards far more focus on school leaver programs. And actually, I think some of the changes we've seen recently, particularly to apprenticeship funding at level 7, I'm sure some of you kind of escaped your attention, the age cap that's been brought in for level 7 learners. I think that's only going to increase the appetite for school leavers, where you bring them in that bit younger and perhaps you can then progress them to their level 7 apprenticeship, one of the chartered qualifications at that slightly earlier age, perhaps than graduates. So I think a really relevant topic, thinking about how employers can engage. And in fact, just to set the scene a little bit, we are going to hear more from her shortly, but we've actually got Siobhan from UCAS. So Siobhan, I don't know if you just want to give us a minute of your kind of overall context of particularly why UCAS is, making big moves into the apprenticeship area.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having us today, Gareth. So a lot of you probably know UCAS as the centralised admission systems for university and colleges, but actually we've evolved to be so much more than that because of the place that we play within schools and colleges across the country. We have a lot of people registering with us to do more of the career discovery side of exploration for their future choices. And one of the major changes we made about 3 or 4 years ago was to actually start displaying apprenticeship opportunities alongside university courses. And it's been quite a huge shift for us. But one of the main reasons why we do this is that every year we have over 1 million people register on ucas.com for something called a hub account. And we ask every one of those people, are they interested in apprenticeships? And actually between, on average, 35 and 40% of that registered audience are actually interested in apprenticeship. And I think the most interesting thing about that is that in the last 4 years, that number has more than doubled. So that awareness around apprenticeships within young people and that interest to find out more is really increasing. So that's essentially why we moved into this space.
Fantastic. Thanks, Siobhan. And, it's something I've personally found very exciting in recent years, that shift into promoting apprenticeships alongside degree pathways. And I was really proud last year to be invited to join the UCAS apprenticeship stakeholder group. Brilliant work that's going on. So in terms of this webinar, we've got some fantastic speakers. We're going to have some really great expert insight from a variety of different perspectives. We're roughly going to break this session into 3 chunks. Firstly, we're going to look at how employers can actually engage with schools and colleges. I think that's becoming a much bigger priority, much more resource going into that sort of activity alongside things like graduate and university careers fairs. We're then going to think about how employers can specifically attract school leavers, what sort of offerings and propositions are going to appeal to that demographic of young person. And then we'll actually think about the transition of young people from school into the workplace. Are there things we can do differently to actually make sure that that early few months in the workplace is nice and smooth and works well, both for the young person and obviously for the employer? So if we start thinking about engaging with schools and colleges, and actually I'm going to stick with Siobhan, because I'm sure you've got some thoughts for us on what employers can do to actually engage with schools and colleges where those school leavers are obviously going to be.
Yeah, so UCAS is an interesting organisation because we've got quite a few stakeholders that we look to serve. So along with helping employers gain exposure for their opportunities, we also work with schools and colleges, work with over 4,500 schools and colleges. And then obviously we have the over 1 million people registering with us, predominantly those year 12 and year 13, but a good 25% of them are actually mature users. The first thing I'd recommend is to read our reports. So we've released several iterations of something called the Project Next Generation, which does a deep dive into 13 to 17-year-olds and how they make their career choices or subject choices, who the influencers are, what point they're making these decisions, and what the barriers are for these people looking at future careers. So, like from some of the research that I've found and some of the data that we have in UCAS, which is quite a lot, one of the main things I'd say is to look at your outreach timing. So we know from our reports that around the peak interest in apprenticeships is actually between years 9 and year 11, and then it drops by 13% in year 12. So ideally, we need to be keeping that momentum going into that sixth form age. So really look at how you can keep that outreach integrated within the whole of a secondary school lifespan. You also need to think about always being on for promotion. So some people just rely on their vacancy periods, but actually, what you need to remember is that for a young person, a school could be talking about apprenticeships or careers like, at the end of year 12. And if that's not during your vacancy period, then you could be potentially missing out on applications. So we know about 3 and 5 potential apprentices actually give up because they can't find one in their local area. And that might be as simple as they have one look at a vacancy board, see there's nothing there, and just assume there's nothing in their region. Whereas if you have that always on promotion through things like employer profiles, it helps to show them that at some point during the year you will be offering apprenticeships. And I think that's really good for those year 12s making those wish lists. The other thing is that on every school website, they should be showing their careers strategy and also their careers program. And on there, they'll be detailing who the careers lead is and what kind of activities they'll be doing in each year group. And this is a really good way for you then to see how you could integrate yourselves into their program and the plans that they have going forward. The other thing is to utilise the provider access legislation. So schools are required to have certain touch points within a young person's time within a school to engage with providers. So if you're an employer, your providers are likely to be going into these schools to talk about these pathways and these vocational pathways. So that is a really good way, if you're struggling to get into schools, is to maybe talk to your provider and see if you can team up and talk about the employer and the provider aspect of an apprenticeship. Also, if you've not looked at Gatsby benchmarks before, there are 8 of them, and they basically dictate to a school what good careers guidance looks like, and all schools should be following these Gatsby benchmarks. In particular, there's several that relate to employers and also providers. So really have a look at those and look at the things, the benchmarks like exploring linking curriculum to careers, because this is where you could really step in here and help them link your specific job roles, opportunities, careers with their actual curriculum within schools. The last thing I would say is that 95% of 13 to 17-year-olds see work experience as important for their future job or career. So this is a great chance for you to actually engage with schools and help with maybe think outside of the box. So think of innovative things like employer projects that could be put within lessons, mentoring, or even virtual work experience for those people that don't have those massive companies on their doorsteps. So there's just a few ways that you could integrate yourselves within schools.
Fantastic. Thank you, Siobhan. In fact, we will be hearing a bit later from a couple of employers who might talk about things like work experience. Feel free, Siobhan, if you want to drop any links to some of those reports you referenced in the chat box, that would be really useful. Well, let's now move over to another perspective, actually. I'm going to ask Erica to introduce herself. And I think, Erica, you've got a few slides you want to share with us.
Yeah, I'll just see if I can get those up now. Great, fantastic. I think they're on the screen. Great, brilliant. I'll try and make sure I stick to time. So I'm Erica Chamberlain and I head up strategic business partnerships at the Careers and Enterprise Company, and fantastically going to build on a few of the points that Siobhan just made. I have lots really echo with the work that we do. So in my short time that we've got here, I want to just cover 2 things to support you all. Firstly, to outline how you can actually engage with schools, special schools and colleges by working in partnership with your local careers hubs. And secondly, how you can use your resources when engaging with schools and colleges to have the most impact, so really resulting in that strong talent pipeline. Just quickly, so for some brief context, for any of you who don't know the Careers and Enterprise Company, we're the national body for careers education in England. We support schools, colleges and employers to deliver high quality careers education, and our mission there that you can see is to ensure that every young person can find their best next step. Now, I'm talking about careers hubs here. So we run a place-based system. So we have 44 careers hubs across England, and they are working with 96% of schools and colleges. So we've pretty much got full coverage now. And careers hubs, we work in partnership between the Careers and Enterprise Company and combined and local authorities. So they're responsible at a local level for driving forward quality careers education in their regions, connecting that to local growth plans, supporting those clear pathways for young people. And they do this by providing support and challenge to almost all of those schools and colleges and thousands of employers. Nationally, we train those careers leaders that Siobhan mentioned that you should be able to find on the websites, and we provide quality assurance and impact data from schools, colleges and young people and employers. Now, we know that skills shortages persist for many industries and small businesses, and that the careers education system, coordinated by CEC but led at that local level by those economic partners, can really help support close some of those skills gaps. And we really want to strengthen that connection between education and employers. So I mentioned careers hubs, that's who you can connect with at that local place level. So when you're thinking about making those connections with schools and colleges, why would you partner with a careers hub instead of going straight to a school or a college? So this can be a real support because careers hubs are connected locally and they've got the direct links to all of those careers leaders at a local level and leadership relationships. They'll be able to support you to know which institutions need support, who's missing out, where your support might be best placed. Hubs have access to local data and insights that will support you to make those strategic decisions rather than relying on being reactive or requests that are coming into you from schools or existing relationships. So really can help you think about where your resources are best placed. They hopefully should also be able to help you save time and ensure that you align with any local priorities and strategy that you have and achieve your aims faster. So that's careers hubs, and I will share in the chat some links to how you can find your local careers hubs. But how can you have the most impact once you're connected? So really what's going to support you is thinking about how you can use the limited resources you have, because this will be one part of any of your role, for delivering careers education outreach to their best effect and have the impact you're looking for. Now, Siobhan mentioned the Gatsby benchmarks. Now, CEC have developed the employer standards, which are specifically for employers to provide you with a really clear framework to businesses of any shape and size to really maximize the impact of your employer engagement with young people, looking at that mutual benefit, so both for you as a business and why you're engaging, but also for those young people. So the employer standards is just a clear framework based on best practice over all the years that we've been in existed that gives you a clear understanding of what good looks like. They're grouped under 3 pillars, focusing on inspiring young people, then preparing them to be career ready, and then collaborating for success. It will support you to consider really actionable things like, are you using relatable role models when you send people into school? Or how can you support young people to understand application processes and really understand those clear pathways? And how do you build sustainable relationships with schools? So it provides you with that framework. On top of that, there's a free online self-assessment, takes about 25 minutes to complete. It gives you real-time results, and then based on your answers, it helps you compare yourself to others in your sector and your location. So again, if you're thinking about that competitive advantage, you can see how you're doing in terms of your quality outreach. It also provides a roadmap and resources, and all of this is free. We've had over 1,600 employers using it so far, so there's a good reach there for that comparison, and they've all accessed those resources and working with young people. Now, because we've had that reach, we've now got quite a lot of self-assessments, which means that we can have some interesting insights, which I thought were particularly relevant to today's topic of how to engage schools and attract school leavers. So the analysis that we do looks at how people are doing against the framework, but also some business insight questions that employers are asked. And this year's analysis split across these 3 insights. So insight 1 showed that engaging in careers education does positively impact recruitment, workforce diversity and talent pipelines. The second insight showed us that if you really build on developing essential skills, it's a cost-effective way of developing your future talent. And then the third insight showed that adopting a strategic approach really leads to scale and impact. So I'm just going to pick out one insight from each of those that I think is relevant to today's topic. So the first one that we saw was that employers who help young people understand and practice application processes are 51% more likely to report that their outreach encourages young people to apply for roles in their business. So this is one of the lowest scoring standards nationally. So it's the one that actually employers are doing least. But what we are seeing is it really has a positive impact on the business and young people applying. Oh, sorry. And so many employers that we know that are doing this really well offer an overview of their application processes for entry-level roles on their website or via social media insights. Some run workshops and experience days. Some employers might be offering mock assessment centre days. And a lot of this you can do with our careers hubs who offer different outreach in this way in connection to schools and colleges. The second thing chimes with something that Siobhan's already said as well, which is what we're seeing is that employers who offer any type of workplace experience are on average 77% more likely to report business benefits to themselves than those that offer none. So we know that it's a really great way to develop essential skills that are a vital part of a school leaver being able to have a successful transition into the workplace. So across every business benefit we asked about, we saw a significant difference in positive response from those employers who are offering work experience compared to those that didn't. And then lastly, from Insight 3, we see that employers who maintain a consistent engagement strategy with schools and colleges are 56% more likely to report that their work is bringing apprentices into their business. So what we mean by a consistent engagement strategy is having somebody in place to support that continuity of engagement with schools and colleges. For example, having more than one individual point of contact and have some shared strategic planning. These employers are much more likely to report their business benefits and also notably that their work is improving the diversity of their workforce. So if you're looking to refine your strategy, you can look at the recommendations after self-assessing against employer standards, but also through careers hubs, you can connect to other employers who have done this, have lots of experience and might be able to share their best practice with you. So I'll share these slides at the end, but I've got some links to the things that I've talked to if you want to make those connections.
Fabulous, thank you, Erica. And I'm already seeing in the chat box people wanting those slides. So it'd be great if you send them to us and we can share with the audience some amazing advice there. And really made me reflect on a comment a client said to me a few months ago about engaging in schools, and they've got a very strategic approach to school engagement work experience. And the partner said, it takes so much time, but it's so worthwhile. And they were really seeing the benefits in that talent pipeline. So thank you very much for those thoughts, Erica. Well, I thought it would also be interesting to actually get the thoughts from some educationalists from actually some of the kind of colleges that we are seeing the school leavers come from. So I'm now going to ask Dr. Richards to introduce herself and take us through her thoughts.
Wow, hopefully, can you see my screen okay?
Yes,
in terms
indeed.
of my slides, excellent. So it's brilliant in this presentation because I'm actually continuing the theme that we have already had. So the first thing is to say I have been working in FE now for 30 years. So 30 years in September. So I have seen a lot of this work and actually have had a background in banking before I came into education. So I do understand as both an employer, somebody who's worked in the sector and now as principal at the college. And I suppose the first thing is about resources. So I have a college of 1,800 young people. You've obviously got Tarek here also talking from Long Road. We have got a huge number of young people available to employers. They are a pool of talent sitting, waiting, wanting to move into industries. And I suppose the first thing to think about as well is also the huge diverse range of qualifications that we've got that are also available to employers. I will talk about some specific qualifications that we do that certainly help to go into careers in wealth management, accountancy and so on. But actually our qualifications and the type of things that students are doing, there are so many skills involved which they can bring into the workplace, whether that's coming into accountancy with Mandarin that we offer or whether it's doing a T-level which has definite practical skills. So my first thing to say is we need absolutely everything from employers. So whatever is being offered, we are interested, we want to engage with you. Certainly certainly colleges, because our students are directly well, much closer, I think, at 18, wanting to go straight into the workplace. So whether it's visits to workplaces, being set employer briefs, an employer coming to mentor our students, that's absolutely brilliant. Talks about how people got into their careers, what were the pitfalls on the way, what would they recommend, work placements, and direct pathways into work. And also, I think a hidden piece is also mentoring our staff, mentoring our teachers. So the first one I would say is if you want to get really brilliant students, and they are really brilliant, get a T-level student who's already doing accountancy. They are already on that pathway. They know that they want to go into accountancy, and they are absolutely brilliant. And at 18, you will get somebody who has already achieved 45 days of placement. Whether they go into a level 3 apprenticeship, or you might want to put them straight onto well, levels 4 and above, depending on how you feel about them. I would say that is my top tip. Find colleges or schools that are offering T-levels. The second one is about teaching teachers, because there's lots of assumptions that the careers leader, the one individual, will have all the information. Now, I've got 1,800 young people, and I can't have that careers leader practically dealing with every single young person. So what we've been doing much more, and you can see in this slide, this is an example of RWE, who are a big offshore energy company. They came in and trained all of our staff. So it wasn't a case of a particular group, it wasn't a department, they trained everybody. And it was quite shocking, considering the size of RWE and the impact in Great Yarmouth, where we're based. This is a hugely significant company, and I had staff that had not heard of them. So don't assume that these teachers or support staff will know who you are. It's a shock, but they don't. The next one is offering every opportunity in terms of training. So we have done particularly well. So our students, for example, doing T-levels have to know about VAT and payroll. So Larkin Gowan come in and teach that. So that means that already it's not just a case of I'm coming in to talk to you about a career in this field. I'm actually going to teach you some practical advice. And something we're seeing quite a lot, our students are now starting to say we want to go into wealth management, because obviously they love money, or they might want to go into asset management. Again, students go in, and when it says in my slide, extend students, that's not students studying accountancy necessarily. That's our most able students, are kind of gifted and talented, who are being taken out and being shown different types of career. The other thing that we do a lot, or we try to get in as much as possible, is whenever there is an opportunity, an employer is doing something, so for example a skills event at the House of Commons, we seek to take students along, because for many of them it is a complete shock how industry works, how Parliament works, and we make sure that we take them along. Another piece that you can get involved with, we're lucky enough in Great Yarmouth to have a youth council. So our students go along, they debate issues about what's happening in the town, and that is a way you can get involved. So whether that is giving them a topic, a debate, or something that you want them to think about, also getting involved with sponsoring things or turning up at events, giving out prizes. We've got we do maths Olympiads. In fact, we do Olympiads in almost everything. Or finally, you can see there also we have, whether it's public sector, so getting involved in transport, all of the logistics, all of the things that you would expect business people to get involved with, regardless of which part of the financial industry they are in. Now, masterclasses I've already sort of mentioned with specific reference to VAT or payroll, but we also do classes where we're trying to get our students to actually present themselves, because obviously working in industry, lots of people are talking about the soft skills, the communication skills that young people need. So we take part in debates with the English Speakers Union, we take students, and all of these, actually I should say, we are based in Great Yarmouth, and for those of you that don't know Great Yarmouth, we have massive disadvantage, we have massive rural poverty, we've got all the coastal issues that you would expect, but we go out and find either employers to help us with this, we find grants, we find funding to make sure that we get our students out and about. And as you can see there as well, we also have the employers coming in to college and actually talking about specific areas. So How can you work with us? Well, it's any and every situation. So we have something listed there called the Ogden Trust, where our students actually get paid to go into work for 4 weeks. They get set a project. This one is particularly relevant to the energy industry, but there is no reason why the financial industry couldn't do this. The students they come up with some really new and innovative ideas. We try and get students out to factories as much as we possibly can. That was a parsnip packaging factory, so you can see how all the production is working. And also we were lucky enough to get some funding to take students to China, so they were able to go and speak Mandarin in China, which is obviously great for future business skills as well. Travel for us is trying to get mentoring, really, really important, whether that's learning Arabic or that's traveling to Fiji. We are after every single opportunity. And that is in order to build the confidence of young people so that you as employers get really, really great and exciting young people. And the other thing we've got as well, which is again a leadership piece, and your staff can get involved with this. We've got a combined cadet force. So it means we have Navy, we have Army available. And although, again, you might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with accountancy? Actually, those skills, the determination, the resilience, hearing how the military work, your staff can get involved. And that's a great way for students to build those relationships that both, well, certainly Erica talked about before, so that somebody knows someone working for your company. That really opens a local door. And as I say, in terms of unusual opportunities, I mean, we got offered an opportunity to take students into a nuclear bunker. There one exists in Norfolk, is in a secret place, and we took students there. And you might think that's an hour or two in a nuclear bunker, but the difference that made to their confidence, they were able to talk about it. They can add it to their CV. They can put it on LinkedIn. The same as well. We've obviously taken them to the Bank of England. Now, I kept this slide in because although it's not directly related to finance, Esther, one of our former students, is now, she's currently in Taiwan until June. She came from a very modest background, and she saw somebody speaking Mandarin, and that meant that she felt that she could do it. And I would apply the same to finance. Also, giving students opportunities to network. If you're going out to a business network event, ask us if you want to take a couple of students with you. We're certainly doing it more and more. This was the Bank of England taught by Kieran Dent. That was part of a networking. My students were the only 2 students there. No one else took a student, but I think it's really important for them to know about this. There's lots of representation. We want to be involved in absolutely everything. And we would say, if you want us to be involved with something, please let us know. And you've already heard about lots of opportunities that happen as usual, careers conferences, and those are all listed, as Siobhan said, on college websites. What I would say, and it's a really simple message, and my message is just do one thing. It doesn't matter what that thing is. We are all open to it. We want that, our doors are open. We want our young people to have experiences. So yeah, by all means, get in touch. And obviously my details are there.
Fabulous. Blimey. Bank of England, House of Lords, secret nuclear bunkers.
Yeah, we try and do a few things.
where do I enroll, Catherine? But actually, going back to your point about the T levels, because we work with Larkin Gowan, one of the firms you mentioned up in Norfolk, and we've had some of your alumni, some of your T-level completers who've done accountancy coming into our classrooms, and they've been fantastic actually. So I would strongly recommend, for the employers on the call, have a look at where you do have local schools and colleges delivering T-levels, and particularly the accounting T-level, because they are fantastic. We've had great success with those coming into our apprenticeships. So thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you.
I know we had some tech issues, so I don't know if you might need to leave.
I might need to leave and come back. Okay.
Thank you. Shortly. But so fantastic, some great advice there from Catherine. But I'm now going to turn over to Tarek. Tarek, do you want to pick up and give us your thoughts?
Yes, hello. Can you see my screen, everyone?
It is there. There we go. Fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so hopefully I can make the thing move as well. Yeah, okay, great. So I'm at Sixth Form College in Cambridge. We have about 2,700 students. We teach a mix of A-levels and applied subjects, and no T-levels. And we have a level 2 program as well. We're based at the edge of the Cambridge Biomedical campus, so we are very lucky in terms of the range of companies and organizations and leading global institutions that are on our doorstep. And we're not very far from the Genome Campus and Cambridge Science Park and so on. So our context is very different from a lot of schools and colleges. So I'm going to talk not so much about my college. We do about over 50 events a year of different kinds of careers. I've got a different hat on today. So I'm a member of the board of the Career Development Institute, and I'm also writing a book on employer engagement in schools, which is going to be published by Trotman when I've written it in October, which hopefully will happen. And that is aimed at careers leaders, but also has an eye on the needs of employers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some of the kind of practical points that I think are important. So the first thing I'm going to do is just going to reinforce the importance of the employer standards from the Careers and Enterprise Company, and that's a great place to start. I would really recommend that if you're not engaged in employer in schools engagement now, to start with that assessment tool, because it will get you off to a good start, and they're really excellent resources. What I'm going to just focus on is just understanding things from the school's point of view. So schools, as already been mentioned, have to deliver the 8 Gatsby benchmarks and report on their progress in delivering them every term using the Compass tool. You don't need to know the details of that. It is something that, as careers leaders, you do think about all the time. And you're reporting that to your internal leadership team and to your governors and so on. So there's a process of review and scrutiny going on all the time. Now, in my view, all of the benchmarks are to do with engagement with employers in some way, but there are 4 specific ones, which are the labour market information, which is 2, linking curriculum, learning and careers, 4, encounters with employers and employees, 5, and experience of workplace. And that's the kind of heart, the kind of meat of the Gatsby benchmarks. And that is what a lot of careers leaders stay up at night worrying about how they're going to deliver that. Okay. It's really important that each of these careers activities has a defined learning outcome, and that's where employers can get involved as well, and that they're mapped against the benchmarks. Each activity is mapped against the benchmarks and the career development framework from the Career Development Institute. Now, you don't need to know the details of all of that. It's more for schools to worry about, but it's important for employers to understand the context in which careers leaders are operating and the things that they need to factor in when they're developing careers activities. And I should just also mention that the benchmarks are set out in statutory guidance as well. So there is a common objective for every school and college that they're all working towards. Right, moving on. So I think one of the other important things to remember is that schools do have capacity constraints. So they won't have necessarily, I'm lucky because I'm a full-time careers leader, I've got a team of 2, but that is actually not that common in many schools. In many schools, the careers leader may well be a member of the senior management team who's got 2 hours a week to devote to careers and possibly 0 budget or very limited budget. And the budget has to be redistributed from other pots in the college or school, because there isn't a dedicated kind of careers budget that is kind of pumped into schools. That doesn't exist as such. And even though careers leaders all need to have careers leader training, not all of them do. There's a waiting list for funded careers leader training at the moment. So if they've got a bit of extra money, they can pay for it. But if not, then they're having to be on a waiting list to get that funded careers leaders training. And as I mentioned, the time available is limited. However, as has already been mentioned, you should be able to find the details of how to contact the careers leader on their website, where they're required to publish that on their website alongside the provider access legislation statement and the other things that have already been mentioned. I think a really important aspect of what you need to do with schools and colleges is build a relationship. I think that's really key, and that's one of the things that I'm going to be addressing in my book, is the importance of building that relationship. So knowing who the right person is to contact is key. And sometimes I know that employers have issues getting through gatekeepers or finding the right person to contact, and then kind of having that ability to access the school. That can be an issue, but it shouldn't be in theory. If you can meet with the careers leaders in person, I think that's really important as well. Give them some time, invite them to your workplace, get to know them, find out what their priorities are, what are the which of the benchmarks are the ones that they're having difficulty delivering, and so on. And it's also important for employers to be really clear about what your own objectives are as well. So are you in the business of trying to recruit school leavers? Do you have a long-term talent pipeline that you're developing? Are you particularly interested in filling skills gaps? And if so, what are those skills? Are they technical skills? Are they general employability skills, and so on? And, how do they relate to the jobs that are, or the vacancies that are going to be in offer? Are you principally interested in community outreach? Because some employers are not really that driven by recruitment. That's the case for a lot of employers around the Cambridge area who might be recruiting globally, but are interested in connecting with local schools for other purposes, for other community and social ESG reasons or social value reasons, or for helping to address diversity and underrepresentation of certain groups within their employees. So it's important to be clear about what it is that your objectives are, so that the careers leader can then map the various activities that they need to do, and you kind of have mutual goals that you're all working towards. And of course, we all work towards term timetables and time and lesson timetables and so on. There isn't always the space within the timetable to deliver the kind of activities. We have this issue at the sixth form that we're often trying to persuade teachers to give up lesson time where we have a guaranteed audience. And sometimes when we're organizing events in college, which is during non-timetable time, then you have to work really hard to market that to students so they come voluntarily to take part in that. And that's a challenge that we have. So kind of creative ways in which you can help the colleges to promote the activity and develop the activity so it is appealing and fun and means something to those students that they'll want to take part. Next one. So then just a couple of kind of practical steps, really. So start small, don't try and do it all at once. I think that's really important. Identify the one or two activities that you think are kind of easy wins or relatively straightforward to deliver, because what you're doing is you're trying to build confidence and trust in that relationship. Okay, so you test it, you review it, you figure out what went well, what didn't go so well, and have that review process and that kind of reflection built into how you engage with the school. It's important, not always, but it's important to have some kind of written understanding of what it is that you're trying to deliver and what objectives you're trying to achieve and how they map against the Gatsby benchmarks and also the CDI framework as well. The CDI framework is broader than the Gatsby benchmarks, and it takes a kind of whole life view of things, and that can be quite helpful in terms of being able to analyze and structure the activity. Okay, so these are some of the obvious things that you probably know about already, but maybe not. A really kind of useful thing to do, and particularly for dealing with Gatsby Benchmark 4, which is linking curriculum learning to careers, is being able to offer classroom resources that are relevant to a particular subject. So it might be maths, it might be economics or business or whatever it is that you're teaching, even sociology, even history, even the humanities and social sciences. They're usually resources that can be developed that are relevant to the workplace, but also relevant to the subject. So it could be in history, it's about interpreting understanding various interpretations of events, for example, which is a key skill for lawyers, for example, and so on. You could go in and deliver a class talk, which would be about introducing your company, what you do, what the career pathways are, and so on. You could just have a presence in college for a day. We do this frequently at Long Road. We've got First Intuition coming in to do a drop-in stand. We've got universities coming in to do drop-in stands. We do little lunchtime talks at 2 o'clock with various people and so on. Schools will hopefully be organizing careers and apprenticeships fairs, so participate. At Long Road, we've built up a whole database, our own database of employer contacts, and these are the people we go back to year after year who come regularly. So we have 30 plus employers who come, and then we try and build that network, adding new companies and new sectors each year. Or you can, schools and colleges work with their careers hubs in order to get that range of employers. So you can help you can help schools by offering to, agreeing to be on their contact database if they have one, and agreeing to be contacted regularly about events and activities. And there are a number of other things there, which I'm not going to go into in a great deal of detail. But one thing I will highlight is that at Long Road, we run a series of interactive challenges with employers. So we do a marketing challenge over 4 weeks where marketing experts come in, they set a challenge for students to work in teams to solve a work relevant problem. We do the same with an engineering consultancy as well. And that's important because what that's doing is, even though you're working with a relatively small number of students, what you're doing is you're developing those team working, problem solving, leadership, analytical, creative problem solving type of skills that are really important for practically every workplace. So do think about that kind of deeper engagement as well. It may come later in the process as you build confidence, but that's important. And finally, there is a lot of worry within schools about how they deliver the kind of work experience guarantee that's coming through, about finding them all the employers that they're going to need to offer those placements for years 9 to 11 and do the preparatory work between years 7 and 9 as well. So being able to offer work experience placements is really important for schools and colleges. I'm going to come back to this later. Yeah. I mean, I think that employers, there's a mismatch between what students and pupils aspire to and the kind of jobs that they're interested in and what the actual skills shortages and job availability is in a lot of sectors. So there's a lot of research, for example, done by OECD, which shows that 15-year-olds, they tend to aspire to kind of 10 traditional occupations. But there's a kind of mismatch, and also in the sense that usually those occupations require going to university and getting a degree, but actually a far smaller proportion actually aspire to go to university and get a degree. So what I'm trying to say by that is that there's a bit of lack of integration within the system. So there are skills gaps in particular industries, but students are not necessarily aspiring to those jobs or necessarily aware of the career pathways that they need to follow to get there. One of the issues that we have at Long Road is that a lot of our students do creative subjects, but getting into creative industries is very, very difficult because the nature of the creative sector is that it's largely freelancers and micro agencies, micro businesses, small agencies, so on. So there isn't that level of apprenticeship availability that there is in other sectors. So, and often what happens in our careers and apprenticeship fairs that we organise is we get overrepresentation of certain sectors like construction and accounting and underrepresentation of creative industries and so on. So that's something that employers need to be aware of. It may be that what you also need to help the schools to do is to educate the young people about where the actual opportunities are. So that means talking about labour market information, what kind of skills are needed, what kind of subjects that they need to study, what kind of qualifications that they'll need to have in order to access the jobs that actually exist, right? And that's not to crush people's dreams, because that's not what we're in the business of as careers advisors. It's helping the students achieve their dreams, but that does come up against reality sometimes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tarek, and I hope you won't mind us sharing your slides as well with the audience. So thanks for that input. Now, as we wind up this first session of the webinar, and we are going to hear later from Karen, but actually, Karen, I wonder if you might just introduce yourself and just give us for a minute or so any of your tips on what we've heard so far.
Hi, everybody. Yes, so I'm lead up early careers and professional qualifications at Grant Thornton. We're an accountancy firm with 23 offices around the UK, 5,000 employees and about 900 associates. For the past few years, our associate intake has been approximately 60% graduates and 40% school leavers. So we made that decision to up school leaver hires a few years ago now. I caveat that my area of expertise is in professional qualifications as opposed to sort of recruitment and selection, but I have drawn on the information of my colleagues to help with this. I would say that there's nothing, it's reassuring to know that we do some of the things that the speakers have been saying today. I think the main two things in terms of selection, we draw on our current successful associates to be ambassadors for the firm and to go out into schools and go into their former colleges. They're more authentic in describing what the actual role is. And it gives the other young people reassurance that they can see, actually, this is achievable. If they can do it, I can do it. So they're really good. If we're struggling to fill certain targets in certain locations, then we will do more outreach and go to specific schools and colleges. We have a national schools liaison team that's made up of people that have wanted to join, and will ask employees in these regions and areas to use their local contacts. They might be parents themselves, to reach out to schools as well. Our firm also gives 2 days a year volunteering. So that also enables people some of our employees to join some in-school initiatives. I'll speak about those, I think, in the next section. But yeah, we have the other thing that was mentioned was keeping in touch was very important. And sometimes you're not able to go into the schools, but it's just sending information, sending flyers or updates to keep the advisors informed. For example, our firm and a lot of other accounting firms in the last sort of year or two are now hiring digital roles. It's not accountancy, it's not tax, it's data and digital. And people might not necessarily think of that when young people come to them about those sorts of careers. Yeah, and we use obviously a lot of social media and engage our current students again, and former associates who are now progressing to drive a lot of that, and again have a greater impact with the audience. Short, effective communications, which again I think I might be mentioning later. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Karen. Well, we will come back to you very shortly. So we're now going to start thinking about how employers can actually attract school leavers. We've talked a lot about that engagement with schools and colleges, but what about having an appealing proposition? So actually, I'd like to come back to Catherine actually at this stage, just see if you've got any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I've written down my kind of 6 things to do. The first one kind of is a repeat of what we said before. Be present. So attend the apprenticeship fairs, make sure that you keep going into the college. The second one is, I think, again, offer work placements and work experience. That really does, building that relationship is such a massive point we can't stress enough. If you're seen by the students, if they know you, they hear your firm. Because remember, there's lots of students, like in my area, where they haven't had parents who are in professional careers. In fact, we're still in a hugely disadvantaged area, and we still have a high number of young people who are first person to go to university here. So actually they haven't got role models. They won't have been to networking events. Their parents aren't accountants. Give careers advice, lots of top tips, especially to areas like ours. We won't have necessarily pathways through. And a point I think definitely that was made before, I think, when we were talking about having your recruitment open. The biggest problem we have is a student will want to go and work for a firm, but they can't then get that job. And so I would say really consider that at level 3 and level 4 and above. Make sure they know the dates of when something is coming up, because otherwise they will get upset about not being able to get there. Let us visit you. Even just looking around an office, a peer said to me yesterday that they had one of our former students who got to visit a fancy London office. Our students haven't been, from Great Yarmouth, our students don't go to Norwich. So if you imagine from Great Yarmouth going to London, that is like flying to the moon. So let them please visit wherever that is, whatever building that is. And then the final bit I put is our alumni, and you mentioned that before. So our former T-level students, our former students coming back, showing the next ones, you can do this. That would be my sort of 6 things to do. That's my shopping list.
Fabulous. Perfect, Catherine. And actually I think that thing, and we talked earlier about having kind of accessible role models and having those peers going back that young people can then relate to and have that aspiration. Well, actually, so to continue this phase, actually, I'm going to come back to Karen, actually, in terms of what is your advice on actually making your your proposition appealing.
Well, firstly, I'd say the use of your digital media, make it easy to navigate the website, make the application processes transparent, and yeah, if we also have videos and podcasts that are short, but again with people that they can recognise as former them starting their careers. So I think all around the digital media is important. We also offer work experience and insight days, whether that's we ran one recently which was an online 2-day work experience for, I think it was, for students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, year 12 to 13, who, yes, might not be able to reach certain areas. We also, as part of Apprenticeship Week, for the first time ever, we ran a webinar for parents and carers, specifically for them to ask questions and to understand more about what a career in accountancy involves, whether you join as a school leaver or a graduate, and the benefits and so forth of that. So that was one of the key things, is going for informing key influencers of young people. We do offer work experience, paid work experience program at a selection of our offices. That's 4 days where they come into the office. They have exposure to, obviously, as Catherine was saying, like corporate office, different service lines, skills, and they're actually offered, if they want to, they're given the opportunity to have an interview at the end of that 4 days, and they can be offered a job at the end of that 4 days. And so I think it was also mentioned about keeping that attraction going into that final year for people that are thinking of, do I go into school, so go into work, or do I go into university? And so I think last year 40% of our school leaver targets were filled by that work experience program, which was brilliant. And we hope to increase that. We also get all these young people that join these work experience programs posting on LinkedIn. We give awards and certificates that they can digitally post to sort of be very proud of what they've been a part of as well. And it's obviously good branding for hopefully for us, whether they join or not, but it hopefully means that when they are sharing their experiences, other people might be interested as well. And yeah, be informative and realistic. We don't shy away from sort of saying that it's what it's going to involve, what the different roles are. Some might suit people that want to be in the office and have a consistent small team around them, if that's going to be better for them. There are roles that might suit that. If they like a dynamic role, being in different areas, working with lots of different teams, then there are roles for that as well. So no, we don't expect them to know whether they want to join tax or audit or advisory at this stage, but we can give them some insights. And we do sort of make sure that they know, you will have to study in your own time, and all these expectations as well, just so that there's no surprises later down the line. But we certainly show them that it will pay off at the end of it, and it will go very quickly. And again, bringing in current people that are young, similar to their age and where they've got to, but also some very senior people as well, just to show that it's a nice place to be. It's a nice place to work, and they don't have to be daunted by that as well. So I'd say those are what we do to attract school leavers.
Fabulous. Thank you, Karen. Some great advice there. And I couldn't agree more that point around, making sure they come in with their eyes open as to, yes, it's going to be rewarding, but it's going to be pretty challenging as well. I was just talking to a young person just a couple of evenings ago who's interested in training as an accountant, and I'm, I did talk about those potential opportunities it can lead to, but they're going to have to put that graft in at the beginning. I always use the expression, nothing easy is worthwhile and nothing worthwhile is easy. And actually the fact it's really hard is why it will transform your career and your life. So, and thanks for commenting as well on work experience, because I've seen a lot of employers putting far more thought and effort into how they structure. And in fact, they're often not even calling it work experience. It's like work insight. And often it's almost a series of interventions, from early school engagement to work experience to placements and internships that maybe then even lead on to a sort of apprenticeship position, sometimes several years later. And there was a comment earlier about actually engaging quite early, maybe at years 9, 10, 11 even, rather than just those who are later on. So thanks for the point about work experience. In fact, I've dropped into the chat box. We actually ran one of these forums on work experience about 18 months ago now. Actually, time is flying, but I think there's still some really valid comments in that. So if anyone's interested in that, put that in the chat box. So we'll come back to you shortly, Karen. But I'd actually now like to introduce Natalie, or at least allow Natalie to introduce herself, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Hi Gareth, morning everyone. I'm Natalie Wright. I'm the office managing partner at Forbes Mazars here in Leeds. We have around 3,600 team members across the UK. We're an audit and accounting firm. We've got over 300 in the Leeds office, and not dissimilar actually to what Karen was saying. We've seen a gradual increase in school leavers forming part of our intake each year. I think we've been about a third school leavers, 2/3 grads over the last couple of years. I'm probably not going to say anything that's different to what anyone else has said so far. There's lots of kind of repeat messages in there, but I'll probably focus on a couple of things in terms of what we do, and particularly how we've gained some success and where we're focusing moving forward. So one of the aspects, and a few people on the call have mentioned it, is that storytelling and authenticity. I think it's certainly proven to us that is more relevant and more important when we're targeting school leavers and we're wanting to attract them into our business. It's a very different messaging that we need to give versus when we're going out to universities and targeting graduates. And that being relatable, sharing stories, and actually demonstrating there is a pathway and this is what other people have done who look like you, sound like you, have been along a similar path to you to now. I can't emphasize how important that has become to us. So we ensure that we have our best people moving forward with that, who have come through our school leaver programs. They will engage with local schools, that they'll go out and give talks. We invite people into the office as well. We do encourage parents and carers to come to those sessions. Again, a lot of the evidence shows us around 45% of students do learn about roles and career moves from parents and carers. So we try and engage them in that process. But as well as those peer groups and having that relatable, more probably from a generational perspective, actually we'll have some of our leadership team there as well. So I'll quite often be there to give a talk, to do a welcome, having been a school leaver myself many, many years ago when the schemes that we've got now did not exist. But actually here in the Leeds office, we've got about 25% of our partner team here are actually school leavers, which is probably quite unheard of if you go back 25, 30 years to when we all started out in professional services. But again, we do it to demonstrate, yes, you're looking at your career now and the options. So here's, an equivalent peer group, but actually it is a long-term career pathway. There are options, that there isn't kind of a glass ceiling because you've not gone to university. I'm a big advocate for that. So we do share a lot of that. Another thing that we do focus on is actually that constant communication and the touch points. and doing it in a different way. So the two big focus areas for us, LinkedIn and TikTok, they are really areas where we have had to double down. And someone who doesn't have a TikTok account, I can tell you, for me, it's been quite an eye-opener. But we've got to, we've got to continue doing this, get on board with how people are consuming information now. Where are they looking for details about what career options they've got, how to get into those careers? So we do focus on both of those areas, but LinkedIn, I think what I found most surprising was actually the number of school leavers who are using LinkedIn as their first port of call to actually consider their career moves. I believe, speaking with our early careers team, it's about 60%, maybe a bit higher than that. I think if we go back 5-10 years ago, that's probably quite surprising for most of us when we're thinking more at that school leaver level and not an experienced recruit. So we've really doubled down on both of those and will continue to. Yeah, I think they're the main two things for me at the moment.
No, that's great, Nathan. Particularly that reflection on, LinkedIn and TikTok. And, I'm sure many of us have a LinkedIn account. I certainly do. I wouldn't have thought school leavers would. So that's really interesting insight. TikTok is perhaps something that's more of an undiscovered territory for some of us, but I think is definitely somewhere where we can engage with this sort of group. And in fact, I know I've got my colleague Chloe on the call, who, in conjunction with a couple of our other colleagues, has recently put together a really brilliant employer's guide on engaging and recruiting. Chloe, I don't know if you want the link to that in the chat box. I'm sure the audience would find that really interesting. Well, we're into kind of the last half an hour of the session, but before we move on to the final slot, I was just wondering if I could come back to a couple of our previous speakers just for a couple of minutes of any top tips they've got on how employers can attract school leavers. So Tarek, can I come back to you actually?
Yes, I've got a prepared a slide for this. Let me just show it. Can you see that? Here we go.
Yes,
okay.
Coming up.
Right. So I'm not really going to say very much about this because it's kind of fairly obvious, and I've mentioned almost everything before. Kind of emphasize the importance of the relationship, the importance of having clear learning outcomes, and measuring attitudes and changes in attitude after each activity and event. We've started doing that. There's lots of help available if you don't know where to start. The thing I do want to just mention, though, is that recently I ran a workshop for a group of our students introducing the concept of VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And the point I want to make there is that actually the young people today are facing quite a bleak outlook when it comes to the workplace. First of all, you've got AI and the impact of AI on entry-level jobs. Now, that's obviously the jury's still out on that. We don't really know what the impact is going to be, but I've been reading a lot of articles talking about the alarming rate of progress on the capability of AI. So every 6 months, there's a new model that comes out that can do things much better than it could before, and in some cases exponentially better. So there is a concern there. We no longer have linear careers. We have squiggly careers, which can go in any direction. So the expectation is that students will be constantly moving from career to career and trying different things out. So there's no guarantee they're going to stay in one place for very long. They might try something out after a few months, move on, and so on. And that's kind of might well become the reality of the workplace. The other thing that I want to just say is that one of the things that we were trying to do through this workshop is get them to understand the importance of developing adaptability and resilience, because nowadays it's less about having a clear career path that you're following from A to Z or whatever it happens to be, gold carriage clock at retirement. That no longer happens. It's about how you can adapt if the job that you're doing no longer exists and you have to retrain and do something else. Okay, and that's a very key skill, and that is something where employers can really work with schools to help through activities, help develop that adaptability and resilience. And just to get students to be aware of the importance of those skills is important as a prelude to actually developing those skills, which is not always straightforward about how you do that. If you look at what's happening in the workplace, the students are putting in leavers are putting in hundreds of applications and not getting anywhere, not getting responses and getting quite dispirited. There's been a lot in the news about that. The option of university as a kind of easy route has now diminished because of the student debt that piles up, and also because of the kind of employability outcomes of certain degree pathways and so on. So you've got lots of graduates doing non-graduate jobs and struggling. We had two of our top students a couple of years ago applying for degree apprenticeships. They're our best students. And each of them had to put in excess of 30 applications before they were offered an opportunity. Okay, I don't want to sound too bleak, but I want to just stop there and just make sure everyone's aware of that context, and the kind of the future that a lot of students leavers see is fairly dark and bleak at the moment.
I've definitely heard a few employers that I've talked to in recent weeks saying that they're seeing a distinct uptick in graduate applicants for school leaver roles, which I think reflects the reduction in graduate opportunities. But I do worry it's going to then crowd out perhaps those school leavers who would normally get school leaver roles. Siobhan, actually, can I come back to you just to finish off this session with any top tips you can give on appealing to young people?
Yeah, so these are probably more kind of technical tips on strategies based on the data that we get. So our vacancy board for apprenticeships last year nearly doubled in visits to like 9.8 million, I think, last year, 2024, 2025. So what I can share with you from that data is that you need to look at optimum timing for your apprenticeship vacancy. So peak traffic for our vacancy board is actually in September and October, and also January. So I think some people assume that getting out at National Apprenticeship Week will get you your best traffic, but actually I would argue that if you opened it up in January, you probably could get both of best worlds because of January and February of National Apprenticeship Week. So think about the timing, but also think about your assessments and are they in student-friendly times? And by that, I mean, obviously for exam periods for those year 13 students, you're looking at January time, you're looking at May, June time. So if you are doing assessment centres or interviews during those months, are you actually going to get the best version of that applicant when they've got split priorities about what they're actually focusing on at that particular time? My second tip is to show what good looks like. So I think Erica mentioned it earlier about that support and what a good application would actually look like. So 1 in 3 apprentices from a lower socioeconomic background didn't actually receive any support with their application whatsoever, according to our research. So if you really want to increase your diversity and your widening participation, you need to be able to direct people to where they can find that support on making an application, whether that's with you or someone else. And on this, I just want to mention that on ucas.com, we've actually released these things called apprenticeship application guides, and we've actually focused them into different sectors. And one of them we actually focus into finance and accounting. And Gareth, you were kind enough to help us develop that and put your quote on it. And on that page, we've actually said, what are the kind of questions you're going to be asked in during an interview for that sector? What are the kind of assessments you might go through? What are the skills that might be looked for? And what can you go read, watch, do that will add value to your application? So if you don't have that advice and guidance on your page, feel free to link it to UCAS and just share it as a resource, because we're widely known and we are utilized. And also the other thing about AI, people don't know how to use AI for applications. So it's always helpful to put a statement on there about using it for inspiration, but not using it to actually write your application, if that is what your advice and guidance would be. So please do talk and direct them on how to do an application, because some of these people just don't have the cultural network around them to support them with making a high quality application, and we need to help them find the best advice and guidance. And my final tip is instead of focusing on the skills that you want within a job advert, also talk about the skills that you're willing to help them to develop. And there's a few reasons for this. Firstly, is to reduce that idea of imposter syndrome, to show that you are going to help them develop skills. You're not just looking for somebody who's a completed article right from the start, but also the top 3 reasons for somebody from a lower socioeconomic group, according to our research for 13 to 17-year-olds, for applying for an apprenticeship is that they're going to be earning a wage, learning new skills, and having hands-on practical advice. So these are the things you need to be promoting within your advert. But not only that, but we also looked at neurodiverse students, and neurodiverse students are actually 18% less likely to say that they're optimistic about their future. So you need to get them excited about this job prospect and show them what you're going to give them in terms of skills. And that's the way that you can really get a diverse range of applicants coming through. I just want to do a quick plug, if that's okay, Gareth. If you want any deep dive into our data or insights, or you want to talk to me more about our resources, please do send me an email or link with me on LinkedIn. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'm more than happy to help.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Siobhan. That interesting point about peak traffic, actually, we've seen, we often get invited to help out at careers fairs for clients, and I've seen those careers fairs and events and recruitment evenings moving earlier and earlier, and we are now in September, almost a full year, but before some of those young people would even start in the workplace. So we're into the last phase of the webinar now. We're going to talk about, because there's no point with putting all this effort into engaging with schools, appealing to young people, if then they struggle in the early months in the workplace and drop off potentially. So I want to talk a little bit about making sure that transition for school leavers into the workplace goes as smoothly and successfully as possible. So we're going to return to a couple of our previous speakers. So Natalie, can I come back to you actually to give any of your thoughts here?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Gareth. So we think about this on a few levels, that kind of before the school leavers actually start and they're coming into the office, how are we engaging with them and preparing them for life at Forvis Mazars and being in work full time? So we do that in a number of ways. We tend to have an evening where they'll come in beforehand. Again, they can bring a parent, carer, or someone with them if they want. We'll have peer groups for a year or two above them here, and also a few members of the leadership team. And we often do a brunch as well. So we've got an option for an evening event and or a daytime event, which we typically hold over summer when they should be on school holidays and therefore more likely to be able to get them to come in. And we assign them buddies as soon as they've been offered a position, and those buddies will stay connected with them. So it's often through LinkedIn or email, and just being that constant, this is what's going on in the business, this is what you need to be prepared for, and what's coming up as we look ahead to starting in September. So it's not just you get an offer, you come in, you go into this kind of chasm of no communications. And I think that regular communication is so important, and actually just giving that opportunity for, do you have any questions, do you have any concerns? Because for a lot of individuals who start, it's the first time that they've come into the city as well, and to actually be in an office where they'll be one of the youngest members of staff for a period, even knowing where to go, which lift do they take, how do they enter the building, all those sorts of things. We want to allay all those concerns, which are the general housekeeping things, so that they can focus on bringing the best selves to work. And then once they have actually started, we do a lot around short, bite-sized micro-learning. So the last thing we want is people sat at a screen for 7 hours a day. It is not going to be enjoyable. We will not get the best out of them. And actually, for individuals who've had that summer period off, you've had your break from school, you've had quite a number of weeks out of a learning environment, to suddenly be back into it again. And it is a learning environment as well as a working environment. Actually, we try and get that balance of doing practical things as well as learning. Again, we've got some things that we have to go through regulatory-wise, employment-wise, but breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and setting out a path for what do the first kind of 1 to 3 months look like. I think actually having that clarity for a lot of people is really important. I always make sure I do the welcome event as well on the first Friday, the first week that they join. I'll have everyone in for a lunch and I'll do a welcome and talk to them about, you know, whatever you're experiencing now is not what life in work will be forever as well. There are some practical things that, you know, there's a shift, there's an adjustment, but actually talk to me about what are you enjoying so far? Is there anything you're worried about? And I do try to make sure that they know that I am really accessible and that our leadership team here are really accessible. And actually that's quite a powerful messaging that you give to them when you're in the office. You're very visible, and they know that if they've got a concern, they can come to you. Just one point, actually, I forgot to mention it before, but I do bring it out in those sessions, is I do encourage everyone, don't think about what job you might end up in or what job you've applied for. That the job that you might end up in probably doesn't even exist yet. We are moving at such pace. Think more about the skills. So the skills that you might have naturally or that you want to develop or that you enjoy, and what skills you need to develop as we move forward, because there are so many options in our business and there'll be even more options in the future.
Fabulous. Thank you, Natalie. I very much look forward to actually visiting your office. Thursday next week, you're hosting an International Women's Day event that I'm attending, so I look forward to meeting you then. I loved actually the point you make about that period before they even start in the workplace. I think of it as the pre-start period. I remember an employer saying to me recently they think that's the most dangerous period in terms of perhaps their heads being turned and them looking at alternatives. So in fact, and actually, Chloe, I might ask you to drop into the chat box, because we even put together some pre-start resources to actually help employers to engage with their budding recruits before they even start. Fantastic. Okay, so we have 13 minutes left. And in fact, to finish us off, I'm going to hand over to a double act, because I'm going to ask Karen to return, but also with Amanda, one of my own colleagues. So Amanda, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, and actually you're going to talk with Karen about some of the things that you've been doing together to ease this transition into the workplace for school leavers.
Absolutely, yeah. So I work for Intuition. I look after the apprenticeship delivery for our national clients. And I work closely with Karen because I look after her lovely apprentices at Grant Thornton. So yes, I think, Karen, obviously what you were speaking about before, you obviously do a lot of all the onboarding, and we want to retain them. You do all that hard work, and we want to make sure that we look after them. And Karen, I think we've spoken before, as part of the onboarding at First Intuition, we actually send out also like a skills assessment. So before they've even set foot and start their program, we know what level they're at. And we also do, which I think is really important, a neurodiverse questionnaire to see if they haven't highlighted something before in the past. Maybe it hasn't been flagged. Maybe we need to make some additional adjustments before they even start the program. I think that's really important. I think one of the things that when new people come into the workplaces, they're often scared to highlight any additional learning needs that they may have had and are sort of declared in the classroom, but often, do I put that on my application form? Should I mention it? So we make a real big point of it in the introductions when we sort of welcome them on program. Did you declare anything? Don't be scared if you haven't. Let's have that discussion, because we can't make those adjustments or learning needs. And things like they have to sit exams, you might get some additional time, but if you haven't told us, we can't help you. And we have those open conversations with Karen and her team to support those learners that do have those needs.
Yeah, for us that's really reassuring, particularly for our school leavers who they do join at the same time as the graduates and can potentially feel a bit overwhelmed at times. So yeah, we try and make sure that their whole as Natalie was saying, the whole pre-boarding pre-joining experience is good. They feel connected, they feel that they're comfortable going to someone if they've got a question, whether that's a buddy or the recruitment team or our team in professional qualifications. And yeah, we work with FI to get all their apprenticeship stuff sorted on time. And what we also have is we have an introductory course to accounting that it's essentially an internal course, but it's run by FI tutors, and this allows the students to go into the FI centre before they start their more daunting professional qualification study to get some initial training in sort of bookkeeping and professional practice, just to ease them in and develop that peer group as well as just getting used to the FI centre. So that's really good. We also designed a specific programme with FI for our school leavers. It's the level 4 of the ACA qualification, so the CFAB, and it's I'd say a gentle programme, acknowledging that school leavers will, a lot of them will be making many adjustments when they start work and a professional qualification, and learning how to do that balancing act. So we have a more gentle approach to those qualifications, and FI have helped in sort of suggesting the order of those and what is more beneficial to be in centre teaching, what might be okay, sort of a blended approach. We also it's with our graduates as well, but in our audit practice, we don't actually put them out onto clients for 3 months. They're doing their study, but they're also doing simulated audits, so they can learn. They do 2 mock audits, so they can learn how to audit and make mistakes in a safe place. And it also means that when they do go out with our clients, our audit teams know that everyone's had a consistent experience, consistent training, so everyone should be able to start at the same starting point. The skills coaches with FI, they're the same coach throughout their programme, which gives that great opportunity to develop that relationship with their skills coach. We also internally, we have what is called associate people managers for their first couple of years, which are non-fee earning. They really are more, they have more time to do a more pastoral type of role, as well as some of the other administrative elements of a people manager. But they, like I say, they have more time than the fee earners, and can have regular check-ins and work with the skills coaches in Amanda's team to support the students through. Also, FI have, the skills coaches will come in to the office for drop-in sessions, or we've come up with ways of getting the skills and behaviours activities to be in a bit more of a efficient, but also a bit more of a dynamic and fun way, with like group presentations and so forth. So it's not it's very much a joint effort in supporting the students through. I'll hand back over to Amanda.
No, I just think it's us sort of working together has why the school leaver program sort of worked well. I think we've learned each year, like this year, like I said, we're now using those skills and behaviours and built the modules based on, we're now coming into the face-to-face, because we feel that's like a really beneficial way instead of always on Teams, especially like communication skills and stuff. So yeah, the presentation unit will now be delivered face-to-face. But yeah, I just think having the same coach throughout the program is really important. They have their employer, they have their boss, but they also have a skills coach they can confide in. Again, it's that support network that they find really important. They have a safe space. If they have other things they don't always feel comfortable speaking to their employer, the coach can be there to sometimes be the middleman. And obviously, we want to keep them on program. We want to see them through. And if we can help with that support, that's what our role is.
Fantastic. No, it sounds like a really great partnership. And actually, a couple of things I was just going to sort of throw into the mix. So, get the sense that you definitely see a difference in the kind of school leaver cohorts coming in to the graduate cohorts coming in. So, interesting just to get your thoughts on that. But also, have we seen an impact of the kind of pandemic, the COVID, the lockdowns that we had sort of in 2020, 2021? Because I know when I look at my own daughters, my elder daughter was very much in that, she's 19 now, so she was very much in the thick of that kind of COVID lockdown cohort, whereas my younger daughter, who's only 3 years younger, kind of escaped it. And actually, it does mean they're quite different individuals. And My younger daughter hasn't yet entered the workplace. She may well do in the next couple of years, but my elder daughter is very much already there. Just wondering if there's any reflections on those points.
I would say the graduates versus school leavers. It's a generalisation, but we do have some graduates that need a bit of work, and are not particularly confident. That's certainly true, but I think and it varies for us because we have some large offices, some small offices, and we just try and make sure that the school leavers, it's a balance between them feeling as part of the cohort, it doesn't matter whether you're a graduate or a school leaver, but also having those things set up to recognise that a school leaver might be less confident in certain things, or might not have certain skills or initiatives that a graduate might. So I'd say it's a bit of a balance. In terms of for me, I've been at Grant Thornton for a long time, 23 years, and I'd say the whole COVID thing, I think the biggest impact, I think, for us was probably in 2022 and 2023. I think going on our first 6 months from our September 25 cohort, I think there's a lot of positivity in terms of the young people joining, and their enthusiasm, commitment, expectations as well. And I think some of that is down to the work we've put in to be more transparent about what is needed and what it will take, but also all the support that's put in place as well. But equally, I think very positive with the latest batch of associates, whether they're school leavers or graduates.
Brilliant to hear. Any final thoughts, Amanda?
No, I'll echo that. I think this last intake in particular, as we've seen great results with them, Karen. And I think it's always just us adapting our approach to every learner that comes in. They're not all going to be the same, but we just need to sort of mould with each year that goes on. I think just having that clear communication.
Fantastic. Any final reflections from anybody, whether our former speakers or anyone else in the audience? I can see some familiar names and faces around. Any reflections on anything you've heard this morning? Or are you frankly bamboozled with the sheer? Catherine, I can see you coming off mute there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I employ degree apprentices 18. So not only do I get my students coming through, I do understand some of the pressures. And what I would say, certainly for the ones I've seen, I mean, I've got people now graduating with firsts who've got 4 years of work experience. They really, because degree apprenticeships are such a prestigious and exciting opportunity for them, I can see how much it develops them. So I would say, I know it is a big commitment, going, certainly if you're doing the level 7, blimey, you're in for the long haul. But what I would say is, I really do think that commitment to an 18-year-old, yes, you might have to educate them a bit more, and yes, they don't want to pick up the phone, which is a new I don't know why that's happened, but don't want to use the telephone. You have to train them, but actually what you get at the other end, I think, is really, really good. And you're doing your bit for society by letting these young people that perhaps wouldn't have gone to university actually get really good qualifications for the industry. Fantastic.
Brilliant. That's a great place to finish. So we are 1 minute to 10, so pretty much bang on schedule. So thank you very much to our amazing speakers. What an amazing 90 minutes of insight we've had there. So thank you to Karen and to Natalie. Thanks to Siobhan and Erica. Thanks to Catherine and Tarek. And thanks to Amanda, my own colleague, for helping out as well. And thanks to Chloe behind the scenes. She does a lot of work helping set these up and for helping share some of the collateral we've been creating to help in the last few months and the last couple of years. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I thought that was a really fascinating discussion, lots of really good content. So we will be summarising the discussion to share. We'll share the slides from the various speakers, but thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye all.